the Crimean Peninsula. Lately, the Eastern European region by the shores of the Black Sea is receiving an increasing share in world news. Crimea has rarely been a subject of worldwide attention. The last time it went into top global news was as long ago as in 1945, when it hosted the Yalta Conference of the leaders of the United States, the United Kingdom and the Soviet Union, which many think defined the post-war division of Europe. These days, the world is talking of Crimea again, this time in connection with Russia's swift taking control of the territory in March 2014. Some political scientists call this event the beginning of a new reshaping of national boundaries in Europe. Crimea has once again become a key square on the grand chessboard of international politics. Crimea entered the stage of world history a long time ago. This remote edge of Europe has long been an object of fierce competition and a highly valued war prize. Empires have clashed for the Crimean Peninsula, and flags over it have changed many times. There are people, however, for whom Crimea is not just a pawn in the geopolitical game, but the only homeland they have on Earth. They are the Crimean Tatars, the native people of Crimea. Official statistics put their numbers in Crimea at around 250,000, which is probably slightly underrated. The voice of the Crimean Tatars is rarely heard on the international stage. What does the world know about them? The town of Bakhchisarai is the cultural capital of the Crimean Tatars, and it was once their political center as well. From the beginning of the 16th century up to 1783, when the Russian Empire annexed Crimea, Bakhchisarai was the capital of the Crimean Tatar state, the Crimean Khanate. The palace of its rulers, the Crimean Khans, remains in Bakhchisarai. It is a museum now. Prior to 2014, when transport communications with Ukraine were disrupted, more than 500,000 tourists visited the historical monument per year. Nowadays, the flow of visitors has noticeably decreased, even despite the square at the palace gate being still quite a busy place. Streets in the old quarters of Bakhchisarai preserve many features of traditional Crimean Tatar architecture. The Crimean Tatars constitute currently about 20% of the town's population. This young Crimean Tatar couple, Eldar and Alime, have unusual jobs. They both work on preserving the vanishing traditional crafts of the Crimean Tatars. They will be our guides into the world of memories and hopes of the people who have unexpectedly found themselves behind the new Iron Curtain. Eldar is keen on the craft of pottery. He creates elegant works of traditional folk art on his potter's wheel. In the past, articles like these were routinely used in any Crimean Tatar dwelling. My parents told me that the family of my great-grandfather Mehmed came from Kozlev Plains. Kozlev was the largest town in the steppe region of the Crimea. The clan of our ancestors, the Mansurs, was a noble one. The family of Mehmet possessed 2 houses in the town and large herds of sheep on the plains. Sometimes Eldar pays a visit to the homeland of his great-grandfathers in the blossoming Crimean steppes. A saddle horse is a rarity in modern Crimea, but Eldar recalls centuries-old traditions. The Mongol conquest of the 13th century was a disaster both for Eastern Europe and for Crimea. The Mongols subdued Turkic cattle breeders that inhabited local steppes. However, the handful of conquerors quickly dissolved among the local population. In just 2 centuries, their common descendants fought together to defend the peninsula from new invasions from the continent. Alime is an embroideress. Graceful Crimean Tatar ornaments of flowers and leaves blossom on her canvas. Crimean Tatar embroidery is full of symbols. A tulip, for instance, means a boy, and an almond means a girl. A rose symbolizes a woman, and those small things represent abundant crops. In the past, girls embroidered such items for their future husbands. I found this pattern on an old headscarf, and now I am trying to recreate it. This embroidery technique is called Tatar ishlem. There are more than 60 types of Tatar ishlem. The roots of the fine plants growing from under her needle reach deep into the historical past. Quite similar ornaments have been blossoming since the ancient times on the embroidery of the Balkans and Levant. Alime's ancestors come from the highlands of Crimea, which for millennia have been the ultimate frontier of the Mediterranean world. Ancient Greece and Rome knew the peninsula very well, both as a supplier of bread and as the scene for some famous antique dramas. More than 2,000 years ago, dwellers of the ancient city of Chersonesos on the Crimean shores pledged in their citizenship oath to protect democracy from usurpation. Windows and doors of man-made caves gape in the majestic rocks of the Crimean mountains. These are the remnants of medieval fortresses. Ancient highlanders of Crimea, allied to the Constantinople emperors, built their mountain strongholds to guard the farthest frontier of the Byzantine Empire from the steppe nomads. The Byzantine epoch left its mark in Crimean temples more than 1,000 years old. The peninsula has long been a true melting pot for all the ethnicities that have ever come here over the centuries. The list of ancient peoples that at some point came to Crimea and settled here forever is extensive. The Tauri and the Cimmerians, the Greeks and the Scythians, the Goths and the Alans, the Khazars and the Cumans, as well as the more recent Mongols and Turks. Many of these ancient peoples have long disappeared. However, living humans do not disappear into oblivion. They live on in their descendants, mixing among themselves and incorporating subsequent waves of newcomers. The descendants of those who had come to Crimea from opposite ends of the continent had merged by the late Middle Ages into a new ethnicity, the Crimean Tatars. The factor which united the steppe dwellers and the highlanders into a single nation was the faith of Islam. From the very beginning of its spread in Crimea, it was distinguished by a tolerance unusual in many other countries of the Orient. By the 15th century, Crimea threw off the power of the Golden Horde, the successor of the Mongol Empire, and became an independent state, the Crimean Khanate. The main reminder of this state remains the Bakhisarai Palace of the Crimean Khans. The assimilation of various traditions gave rise to a unique culture of the Crimean Khanate, which comprised the legends of Anatolia and the architecture of the Renaissance, Arabic calligraphy and Balkan music.
16 asrının ikinci yarısı ile 17. asrının başında yaşadı.
Gazegire II, a Crimean Khan who lived in the second half of the 16th century and at the beginning of the 17th century, could rightfully be considered one of the most outstanding figures in Crimean history. Gazegire had a versatile personality of a true master of pen and sword. He had been ruling Crimea for 20 years, proving himself as a powerful ruler and a wise politician. The Khan spent much of his lifetime in military campaigns, experiencing both the joy of victory and the agony of defeat. He earned a place in Crimean history as one of the most prominent military leaders of the time. Along with that, Gazegire left a valuable heritage in the cultural life of Crimea. He was famous as a talented poet, a musician who mastered many different instruments, a composer who left about 70 known musical compositions, a calligrapher, and a patron of the arts. The Crimean Tatar